Welcome again, everyone. We're going to get started here shortly. We're just waiting for folks to join our call. We had a large number of registrants for this call, so we just want to give folks an opportunity to get into the call.
Pues bienvenidos nuevamente, ya casi iniciamos, estamos esperando que se sumen varias personas más, tenemos muchas personas inscritas, así que solo le vamos a dar una pequeña oportunidad de entrar a la reunión.
Welcome everyone to TURN's Power at Home training number 3, medical baseline and planned outages. Before we begin, I want to allow Nico, one of our intrepid interpreters, an opportunity to share some information about the interpretation function. Bienvenidos todos al tercer taller de la campaña de TURN, Poder en Casa, Medical Baseline y las desconexiones programadas. Antes de comenzar, voy a pedirle a Nico, una de nuestras intérpretes, que comparta por favor información sobre la interpretación en Zoom.
Hi everybody, good afternoon. My name is Nicola. I am interpreting today's event along with my co-interpreters Julia and Mónica. Hi everybody. Oh, en español. Hola, buenas tardes todo el mundo. Mi nombre es Nicola. Estoy haciendo interpretación con mis colegas Julia y Mónica. Les voy a explicar un poco de cómo funciona la interpretación en esta reunión. I'm going to explain a little bit about how interpreting works at this meeting. The very bottom of your screen, you should see a globe that says interpreting. En el fondo de su pantalla, si es que están en el laptop, van a ver un icono de un globo terráqueo que dice interpretación. Ahí puedes seleccionar, el canal que más les conviene, ya sea inglés o español. Si usted es bilingüe, no tiene que seleccionar ninguno. So when you see this globe, it says interpreting, click on it, and then you can select whichever language channel you feel most comfortable in, either English or Spanish. If you're bilingual, you don't have to select any of them. If you don't see this, if you're on your phone, on your tablet, you might see 3 dots. Click that, click interpreting, and then whichever language channel you prefer. Si usted no ve este globo terráqueo, puede ver, quizás si está en su tablet o en su teléfono, puede ver 3 puntitos. Haga clic, va a haber una opción de interpretación y ahí seleccione inglés o español, cualquier canal que le convenga más. Si todavía no ve ninguna de estas 2 opciones, ya sea 3 puntos o el icono del globo, puede que tenga que reiniciar su aplicación de Zoom e instalar la nueva versión. If you still don't see a globe that says interpreting, or if you don't see the 3 dots, I would recommend exiting Zoom and coming back and installing the latest version in between, because you may not have the latest version that's compatible with the Zoom interpreting feature. If you're having technical issues, please don't suffer in silence. Reach out to one of us or to Jorge, Jorge Rivera, who is the technical person for this meeting. Si no ve ninguna de esas opciones, aún después de reiniciar y todo eso, por favor no sufran en silencio, escríbanos a nosotros o a Jorge Rivera, que es la persona encargada de asuntos técnicos para esta reunión. Así que muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Enjoy the meeting.
Thank you, Nico. My name is Gabriela Sandoval. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as Director of Strategic Initiatives with the Utility Reform Network, or TURN. I'm speaking to you today from the occupied land of the Tongva people in Southern California. I'm joined by my colleagues Constance Slider-Pierre and Jorge Rivera. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Constance Slider-Pierre. I'm the organizing director at TURN. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. And I am delighted to be joining you all from the occupied land of the Chucheño and the Muwekma Ohlone. in the area currently known as Oakland, California.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jorge Rivera. I am the Organizing and Advocacy Coordinator with TURN, and I reside in occupied Tongva territory. I am currently joining you from Mayan, occupied Mayan territory in Mexico.
Thank you both. I'll just quickly share a little something about Zoom. I think everybody is familiar with the functions now, but on the lower left-hand side of your screen, there is a mute button and a stop video or share video button. So you should keep yourself muted during the presentations. We will have an opportunity to chat at the end. We encourage folks to share their video to help us feel connected in the space. As you move over to the right, you'll see the participants button. You can click here to see the 49 folks who've joined us today. We've actually had a whole lot of people registered, but I'm wondering if people are maybe recovering from last night or something. We were expecting about twice as many folks. So maybe they'll trickle in here. And then next to that is the chat button. It's a little speech bubble. Feel free to click on that to ask questions, share thoughts. And if you would right now, go ahead and go in there and give us your name, your position, and the organization that you represent. We'd really appreciate that. There's a reactions button further to the right. You can click here to give me a thumbs up or an applause emoji. So why don't you go ahead and do that right now? Give me a thumbs up if you would. And then next to that is the interpretation button. Okay. Feel free to communicate directly with Jorge Rivera if you have any technical difficulties. Okay. Before I get started, I'd like to just level set a little bit. We at TURN like to talk about planned outages. How many of you know what a PSPS is? Raise your hand or wave at us or click the thumbs up on your reactions. All right, I see a few thumbs there. Okay. So I just want to clarify that at TURN, we use the words planned outage to refer to what the utilities like to call public safety power shutoffs, or PSPS. We don't call them PSPS because to us, they are not about public safety. They are about the utility companies trying to save face for being out of compliance and putting the interests of their shareholders before the interests of their customers. So just so everyone knows that that's what I'm talking about when I say planned outages, okay? All right, so we've got lots of information for you today. We'll start with medical baseline. The medical baseline program, give me another thumbs up if you've ever signed somebody up for medical baseline, or you know what medical baseline is, or you're signed up for medical baseline. See a couple thumbs coming up. Awesome. All right, the medical baseline program is actually, we like to call it at TURN the best kept secret in California. At least 80% of utility customers who qualify and could benefit from this program have never even heard of it, and they aren't signed up. You can help us change that. Medical baseline provides 3 types of support to customers who depend on power for certain medical and independent living needs. 1, extra discounts on their monthly energy bills. 2, extra protections against utility shutoffs when customers fall behind on their payments. And 3, extra notifications and attention in advance of those planned outages that we'll be talking about. So medical baseline discounts and protections are available to all electric and gas customers of PG&E, Southern California Edison, Southern California Gas, and SDG&E who have a qualifying medical condition. regardless of income. LADWP, SMUD, and the other municipal utilities don't offer medical baseline, but you can contact them directly to find out what kinds of protections they might offer their medically vulnerable customers. Medical baseline discounts are in addition to care and FARA discounts. So keep that in mind. There's no income requirements, and you can get medical baseline on top of care and FARA. Jorge, if you would put up slide 2 for me. By partnering with TURN to enroll as many eligible households for the medical baseline program as we possibly can, you are contributing to the TURN Power at Home campaign to guarantee basic utility service to every resident in California. So let's talk about how medical baseline works. All residential customers receive a baseline allowance to cover basic energy use every month. Customers pay more for energy they use above and beyond that baseline allowance. Customers who are eligible for medical baseline receive a bonus to their baseline allowance for their electricity and/or gas. This ensures that customers who use devices or have conditions that require them to use more energy get a break on their monthly bills. So for example, a PG&E customer on medical baseline will save anywhere from about $30 to $45 on their monthly bills. That's a total of $380 to $530 every year, depending on whether they qualify for just the electricity discount or for both the gas and electricity discounts. PG&E Care customers can save about $20 to $30 monthly, or $240 to $360 a year. So again, these are not insignificant discounts. Don't forget that if customers live in Southern California, they have to submit separate medical baseline applications to both Southern California Edison and to Southern California Gas. Okay, in addition to saving money, medical baseline provides extra protections for customers who are in danger of having their utility shut off because they're behind on their payments. Remote shutoffs are banned for medical baseline customers. This means that they cannot be shut off via their smart meter. This is an important protection because it requires utilities to go to the trouble of sending out a truck and a crew to shut off the person's electricity in person. How many of you remember the days? Give me an applause emoji if you remember the days when the utility company had to send out a truck to shut off your utility service. Am I dating myself? Yes, I see a few hands there. All right, well, this is a requirement of medical baseline. Medical baseline customers cannot be shut off remotely. Medical baseline also requires utility companies to make a good faith effort to communicate with the customer in person before disconnecting their utility service. As a result, very few medical baseline customers are disconnected. And then all shutoffs are banned for medical baseline customers who are in hospice, depend on life support equipment, or have a life-threatening condition, as long as they sign up for a payment plan of no less than 12 months. Okay, utilities are required to take extra steps to notify medical baseline customers in advance of any planned outages. If they need to shut off power in a community in order to complete work on their equipment, or if they plan to shut off power in order to try to avoid causing a wildfire, they have to make a serious effort to contact medical baseline customers in advance of those disconnections. The utility company must do everything they can to send customer alerts at 48 hours, 24 hours, and just prior to shutting off power. Notifications are provided to customers through automated phone calls, texts, and emails. Medical baseline customers may receive extra notifications as part of this outreach, which can include additional phone calls or a door knock to make sure that customers are aware and can make preparations to stay safe during a power outage. Next slide, please. Let's talk about how to qualify, who is eligible for medical baseline. To qualify, a full-time resident in the customer's home must meet one of these three requirements. They must either rely on life support equipment, they must have a life-threatening illness or a compromised immune system, or they must have a condition for which additional heating or cooling is medically necessary to sustain the patient's life or to prevent their health from deteriorating. Now let's unpack this a little bit. What is life support equipment? Life support equipment is equipment that uses mechanical or artificial means to sustain, restore, or supplant a vital function, or mechanical equipment that is relied upon for mobility both within and outside of buildings. So instead of having me read you a long list of qualifying equipment, I want everybody to open up the chat box and give me an example of qualifying medical devices. Anybody have one in there? Or maybe unmute your CPAP, yes. Apnea machines, yes. Scooters, dialysis, yes. Hemodialysis machines, oxygen tanks, exactly. There's an illness lots of children in the Central Valley suffer from. What do they use that also qualifies them? Anybody? Tanque de oxígeno, yes. Nebulizers, yes, that's a big one. Lots of people don't know that you can, iron lungs, yes, absolutely. Okay, so yes, keeping insulin refrigerated. Anything else? I think you hit all the ones on my list here, and there's a whole host of others. Qualifying medical devices include any medical device used to sustain life. Devices include equipment used for mobility, so wheelchairs are included there for sure. Wheelchairs and scooters, motorized wheelchairs and scooters. Okay, now let's talk about life-threatening illnesses or compromised immune systems. Anyone with the following conditions also qualifies: paraplegia, hemiplegia or quadriplegia, multiple sclerosis, scleroderma, asthma, sleep apnea, or a compromised immune system. Okay, now there's this third criteria, right? Having a condition for which additional heating or cooling is medically necessary to sustain the patient's life or to prevent their health from deteriorating. This is the most overlooked criteria because there's no predefined list of conditions that automatically qualify. Medical providers should be reminded of Center for Disease Control guidelines on chronic medical conditions whose treatments require adequate healing or cooling. So these can include heart disease, mental illness, depression, insomnia, poor blood circulation, obesity, and a host of issues that affect our seniors and our elders in California, as well as infants and young children. There are no other requirements for medical baseline. There's no income requirement and there's no immigrant status requirement, and medical baseline support cannot be used against customers as part of the public charge rule. May I get the next slide, please? Okay, there are two steps to becoming certified for medical baseline. The customer has to fill out an application, and then the application has to be signed by a qualified medical practitioner. But right now, because of COVID, customers can sign up for medical baseline without the medical practitioner's signature until April of 2021. Okay, so now let's unpack these. The customer will either have to print a paper application or apply online. This is new. The utilities have been asked to make it easier for people to apply, so you can now apply online. I know there's at least one person joining us today who's done this recently, and I believe it took him like 10 minutes to get it done. So they've really streamlined that process, at least until April of 2021. That application asks for some basic information. It'll ask for the customer's account number, which can be found on the first page of the customer's bill. It'll ask for the account holder's first and last names, the name of the resident in the home who requires medical baseline, if that's different from the account holder, the address where service is provided, a telephone number, and you'll be prompted to provide customer contact preferences. And this is really important because this is for notification for planned outages and for other important communications. So you want to make sure that that information is up to date and accurate. Even though medical certification is not required at the moment, I want to take just a few moments to walk you through that process as well. Once the customer's application is complete, they will need to get a medical practitioner's signature. The following healthcare providers are qualified to provide this signature: an MD, a doctor of osteopathy, a nurse practitioner, or a physician's assistant. If required, customers should bring their completed application to their healthcare provider for certification for the signature. Ideally, the customer should not assume that their provider will mail the application in for them. Customers should request a copy of their signed application, keep a copy for themselves, and send the original to their utility company. If the medical practitioner certifies that the customer's condition is permanent, the customer will need to self-certify every 2 years. So they will have to reapply every 2 years to stay in the medical baseline program. If the medical practitioner certifies that the customer's medical condition is not permanent, the customer will need to self-certify or reapply every year, and a new application, including the medical practitioner's signature, will be required every 2 years. If I could have the next slide, please. Oh, I'm handing it off to Constance now.
Thank you, Gabriela. And thank you, folks. I've been monitoring the chat, and I just want to say thank you for some great questions. We are going to take questions after the presentation is complete. If you have a question and it's rolling around in your mind, please do feel free to enter it into the chat, and we will make sure that we get to it. If for some reason we run out of time, we will follow up with you later. So I'm going to talk about the SGIP program, or the Self-Generation Incentive Program. Now, this program is facilitated and by the California Public Utilities Commission, but it is implemented by the investor-owned utilities. Those are the major utility companies providing energy throughout the state of California and include Pacific Gas and Electric, Southern California Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric Company. This program has 3 different programs attached to it, and one of the 3 everyone qualifies for. I will outline all 3 programs, but all customers of investor-owned utilities can qualify for one of 3 of the SGIP programs. And what this program does because self-generation incentive program is a pretty vague term. But what it really is a program that provides rebates to customers who get backup batteries for their home, or what they call self-generation. These are batteries some of you might be familiar with. Tesla is a company that is providing these type of backup batteries, and there are other companies out there. A lot of times they are tied to or associated with folks who have solar, but the reality is this program is not limited to folks who have solar on their homes or on their apartments or units at this time. You can actually get a backup battery without having solar. So the benefits of having backup battery, or the benefits of storing energy, is that customers who store energy can use this energy during peak times and during power outages. As Gabriela just spoke about, public safety power outages are a real threat here in California, as well as non-planned power outages are a threat. And the benefit of storage is that batteries can be used during these times when folks lose power. Next slide, please. So there are, again, 3 programs. The first one is a general market rebate. This program is a rebate that is available to anyone who is who receives their energy from an investor-owned utility and who is interested in getting backup battery or backup generation on their home. And it covers 25% of the cost of a backup battery system. So to put this into a little perspective, depending on the size of your home and definitely what type of home you have, we'll say a battery could cost anywhere from $11,000 to $20,000 to $25,000. Some homes actually require 2. So let's say, to make my math really simple, if your battery costs $10,000, you would be eligible for a 25% rebate after your battery was installed, and that would give you a $2,500 rebate on the cost of your battery. Next slide, please. The second program is called the SGIP Equity Rebate. This program targets lower income families and lower income communities to provide them with deeper rebates to incentivize these communities to invest in backup generation. And it covers 85% of the cost of the backup battery system. So for example, again, a $10,000 battery. Again, folks, these are not cheap, but a $10,000 battery would qualify for an $8,500 rebate. Now, families specifically that are eligible for this equity rebate include single family homes that are subject to resale restrictions, families participating in the single family affordable solar homes program. And there are qualifications for this SASH program. They follow the guidelines of affordability. And when we talk about resale restrictions, these are homes that are under a mandate to be resold at a lower profit. So for example, a good example of this are homes that are generally built by Habitat for Humanity, where you buy this home and it is provided to a family. They are able to make a profit on the resale, but they may not make a large profit on the resale of that home because there is a resale restriction to make sure that that home stays affordable. Other folks that are eligible for the equity rebate program include low-income apartment units with 5 or more units, and units that are located in what is considered disadvantaged communities. Again, these are lower income communities, and within low income apartment complex, 80% of the low income residents, of 80% of the residents in the apartment complex must be low income. Obviously, when you begin to talk about apartments or multifamily units, folks, we start running into some challenges because most of us who live in low-income apartments or multifamily properties don't have the luxury of necessarily making those decisions. And so we understand that this is a barrier and a challenge, but we do recognize that you as advocates, as providers, are also sometimes on the front line of supporting low-income or affordable housing developers or developments and influencing the way in which they approach assessing these type of incentive programs for their residents. And so we hope that you will take this back to your communities, back to those organizations, and encourage them to work on behalf of our residents to make sure that they are receiving the benefits and the securities and supports that a program that SGIP can provide. Next slide, please. Now, I want to spend a good part of my time on this third program because it's a new program. It was just released in March of 2020, and it is in response to two very important things that Gabriella spoke about, and it ties them together. It's the SGIP Equity Resiliency Rebate, and it covers 100% of the cost of a backup battery system. I'm going to repeat that. It's the SGIP Equity Resilience Rebate, and it covers 100% of the cost of a backup battery system. Now, the requirements for this program are a little bit different than the requirements for the other two programs because we're targeting a certain subset of folks here. And here's what we have to look at. People who are eligible for this. Oh, I didn't give my example. For example, if you have a backup battery that costs $10,000, you're going to get a rebate of $10,000. And yes, it is real because I do talk to folks who have actually benefited from this program. Now, here's who qualifies. If you've experienced 2 or more public safety power shutoffs, or you live in a high fire threat district, you is one of the first qualifications. Now, what is a high fire threat district? Well, this is a designation by the state of California in which you can go to a map. There are maps also on the PG&E, SDG&E, and SCE website, as well as you can Google high fire threat district. For most folks, if you live in a high fire threat district in California, most folks know it by now because you've probably experienced at least 2 public safety power shutoffs, and you have a heightened awareness around what fire threat looks like in your district. But if you have any questions about that, please do look at a map. And a high fire threat district, that is a level 2 or a level 3 threat district. Qualifies you for this program. In addition to having that qualification, you must live in a multifamily deed restricted house or single family home with resale restrictions, or currently be enrolled in a medical baseline program, which Gabriella went over, or have notified the utility of serious illness or life-threatening condition, or your home must rely on an electric pump or well for water. If you are in a high fire threat district or you have had 2 or more public safety power shutoffs and one of the other qualifying conditions, you could qualify for receiving a backup battery with 100% of the cost in rebate. Next slide, please. go back. So before I finish here, before I finish here, I want to talk about the process, a little bit about the process to qualify for the SGIP program or to get enrolled in the SGIP program. As I've stated, this is a rebate program, which it means that if you qualify for 100%, if you qualify for the equity resiliency at 100% rebate, you still have to come up with $10,000 or $20,000, which for a lot of folks in lower income communities or folks just struggling to make it, that's a pretty big hurdle to overcome. There's a couple of options here. I'd be happy to talk to people more about them, but let me just outline a few of them. One, we have advocated with the CPUC as well as other advocates that to target communities, lower income communities, or people who are already struggling with power safety shutoffs with a rebate program is cost prohibitive. And in response to that, the CPUC, along with the investor-owned utilities, have developed a pilot program, which we hope will expand, in which folks will no longer have to come out of pocket with this money, but that they will actually provide half of the money upfront to the company, and the company agrees to hold off and receive the other half of the money once the battery is installed and the money is released from the carrier. So let me tell you a little bit about what the process looks like. If you believe you qualify for this program and want to apply, applications are available online through your utility company. But you don't have to do that work. What you need to find is a company that wants to install the battery for you. And those companies actually fill out all the paperwork for you and submit them to the utility for you. Once your submission is received and reviewed by the utility, and once it is approved, then the work will begin on your project. And once your project is up and running and your battery is running, then you will receive the rebate check. That is traditionally how it has worked. But again, with the exception of new rules being put in place, the part of the rebate would actually go back to the company, and there may be no out-of-pocket expense for folks at this time. And with that, I will stop and take questions, or I will stop and let Gabriella take over.
Thank you, Constance. I learned a lot from that. There's a lot of information and you made it really accessible in a very short amount of time. As Constance said, these are new programs. This is information new to our training. So we're looking forward to answering lots of questions and to finding answers to any questions that we don't currently have. But before we open it up for cute questions, I do want to just talk a little bit about what you can do, you and your organization can do to make an impact. And I'm going to just talk about this first bullet point here. Participate in the de-energization proceeding. Raise your hand if you've ever participated in a California Public Utilities Commission, anything, a public hearing, a proceeding, a general business meeting. Anybody have that experience? This might even be, oh, there's a couple of thumbs up. That's great. Okay, so one way that TURN is working to help folks participate in this way is that we are serving as a kind of advisor to organizations. So the California Public Utilities Commission requires that utilities file a report 10 days after a planned outage. So 10 days after a PSPS, the utility company has to write up a report about all the reasons why they conducted this outage, and what circuits were de-energized and how many people were impacted and what kind of process they put in place to notify folks, especially vulnerable community members, about their community resource centers that they stood up and how many people they served. And at that point, the public has 15 days to respond to these reports. So this is now 25 days after the end of a planned outage. Organizations can file a report with the PUC responding to the utilities report. So one important way your organization can make an impact is by letting TURN know how your constituents were impacted by the planned outage. TURN is committed to helping as many voices be heard at the CPUC as possible. To that end, we encourage you to write up a brief report. It can be in narrative form. It can be as short as a paragraph or a long bulleted list describing the impact of the planned outage in your community. In particular, if you can comment on the quality and amount of advance notification, the impact to vulnerable community members that you serve, the communications between PG&E and your organization or your local government or your community, the quality of response and effectiveness of community resource centers that they put up to help people, charge equipment or provide cooling. And any impacts that you can quantify are especially helpful. So the number of people who were negatively affected, the costs incurred by your organization or community members, the increases of people showing up at emergency rooms, the number of people who were turned away because there was simply not enough energy to charge their medical equipment, etc. So your comments can either be paraphrased and we can include them with or without attribution in TURN's response to the post-PSPS report to the PUC, or we can include your report as an addendum to TURN's report. We can also, if you feel real like we're gonna go get them and you wanna write up your own report, we can help you file that with the PUC as well. If you'd like more information about how to do this after the training today, please contact me and we can set up a time to discuss this further. You wanna take us home, Constance? You're muted.
You're on mute, Constance.
Yes, thank you, Gabriela. So we're going to open up the floor for questions in a few minutes. You'll be able to unmute and ask a question, or as I said, you can put your questions in the chat and Jorge will read them. We already got quite a few questions. A robust dialogue will be happening. I'd first just like to thank our interpreters for being here and making this training accessible today. Thank you, each and every one of you for coming. Yuvia, Nicola, and I'm so sorry, Gabriela.
Monica?
Monica.
Thank you. I'd also like to encourage or remind you to visit the website TURN to sign up for our action alerts so you can stay informed and get engaged in our Power at Home campaign. The stuff that Gabriela was talking about is critically important if we want to expand opportunities for our communities. Jorge is providing an evaluation form. We appreciate any comments that you will give us on how we can improve these trainings in the future. We do plan on having a second set of trainings coming out in the winter around January. Some of it will repeat, some of it will be new information to help support our families. Please let us know what you need to know so that you can support the communities that you're working with. And finally, I would just like to thank our funders who make this training and others possible, including the California Endowment, the Dean and Marguerite Lesher Foundation, Dignity Health, San Francisco Foundation, and YNH Soda. And with that, I'll open up the floor for questions. Jorge, would you like to give us the first couple?
Sure. These are some that came in during the talk around medical baseline eligibility. One was there's a west-facing apartment that gets hot in the evening and needs AC in order to get under 75 degrees. for sleeping, do you have to have a specific health diagnosis or letter from the doctor in order to be eligible?
Yes, so there's often, I've also noticed that somebody asked about cancer, and there are often questions like this with kind of like specifics. I would say to each of those questions that the key thing that has to happen is that the customer has to advocate on their own behalf to their medical practitioner, so that the medical practitioner will sign that certification form. If the medical practitioner says that this customer needs heating and cooling in order to maintain their health, that is all that matters. So people should keep that in mind, that there are very, specific situations where maybe they don't fit into the list of conditions and the list of medical equipment neatly. But what you need to do is get the medical practitioner to sign that form.
Great. And another question around medical baseline eligibility was, what if somebody applied online and they received no response? What should they do?
So if someone applied for medical baseline and did not receive a response, yeah.
Right.
So the customer should call up the utility company and let them know. This is why I say this is actually a great question, because this is why I always tell people, even if they have to take a picture of their filled out application before they mail it in, because sometimes it does take a very long time to actually get the discount to show up on a person's bill. And so if the customer has evidence that they sent in this application, it's dated on a certain day, I sent it, then they can make the argument for backdating the discount. And so I would encourage that customer to call up their utility company, make sure they let their utility company know that they sent in the application, or resend it. Right now, it's a very easy process. They can do it online. So if worst came to worst, send in that application again.
Great, thank you. Another question that came in is around the SGIP program is, how do you get consent from an apartment landlord for the backup battery? How big is it? And do you need city electrical permits in order to install it?
Yeah, so this is a tricky part, no doubt. You will have to go to your apartment owner, and you will have to advocate for this program for a backup battery. There are rights of owners, and so anybody who's interested in this for their apartment or multifamily unit does need to go through their landlord or their owner in order to access this program. And then the owner would actually, on behalf of the unit, on behalf of the complex, need to move forward with that process. And if they were willing, you could help to support that if you chose to. The second question is, how big is the battery? The battery is actually the same size as your electrical box. It's not a very big unit at all. And it's all got the new technology in it. So you really, once it's installed, you really don't have to do much as far as messing with it. There's an app that you can get for your phone, so you can turn it off and on when you need to. And then there was one more part of this question. The size.
Do you need electrical permits?
Yes. So you do need permitting for this. All permitting goes through two phases. It goes through a city phase. It goes through a permitting phase through the utility. And all of that process will not fall on you. All of that process is done actually through the provider. So they do all the paperwork for you. They pull all the permits. Once you sign that you want this and that you're moving forward with this process, the actual company that does the installation and provides the battery does all of this work for you.
Thank you. There was another question that came in from Richard asking if you will be talking about the effects of electrical utility de-energization events when the cell towers lose power due to de-energization events and cell phones don't work. And then there was a tag-on question that said, what if someone has equipment that needs to have Wi-Fi connectivity via cellular or DSL, etc.?
So I don't know how you would like me to tackle that question. The short answer is no, we're not I mean, de-energization is the public safety power shutoff. That is a de-energization incident. It is one form of a de-energization incident. We're talking about it in the sense of trying to give tools to people on how to handle and manage those incidents. We've talked in other trainings about what people need to do to prepare for these. We will likely continue to talk about what people need to do to prepare for these incidents, to secure the safety of their families and themselves, particularly the most vulnerable, which the folks who are on this call, those are the folks that we want to make sure have this information and that you support them. And with that being said, I do want to thank the service providers who are on this call, the medical practitioners who are on this call, the social workers who are on this call, and the advocates for families and parents and vulnerable communities who have joined here, who have direct touch with the vulnerable communities, with patients, with disabled folks who are getting this information out to them to make sure that we are doing the best that we can to secure these communities during these very difficult and trying times with COVID, with public power shutoffs, and with so much happening. So that is that part of the question. And the other part was about telecommunications. And I think if that's Richard Scaff, you and I have a meeting shortly after this. I'm happy to take that up with you there. I'm not quite sure what we need to talk about. There is a challenge, of course, with folks maintaining their ability to make phone calls. I think many folks have either experienced it through a PSPS or heard about it. It is something that TURN is very concerned about. We've been very engaged on the telecommunications proceedings that are moving forward to better ensure that communities have access to telecommunications during public safety power shutoffs. And we're doing everything that we can, and we will be providing opportunities for each of you to weigh in on that as we move forward with those legal proceedings to ensure the safety of all people, and particularly their ability to communicate during that time.
Thank you, Constance. Another question that's come in is around the PG&E PSPSs in the Bay Area, and wondering how they can have a PSPS event during a moratorium on shutoffs until April. And is there any way to get the customer's power turned back on in these cases if it happens?
So I'll field this one, Constance. So the moratorium is a COVID emergency protection against shutoffs due to inability to pay. And the planned outages, or PSPSs, are about preventing wildfires. And so sadly, the moratorium does not cover planned outages or PSPSs because of PG&E's kind of historical negligence. We are now at risk due to their equipment being able to spark wildfires. And so sadly, that moratorium does not cover planned outages. And there is nothing we can do to get customers to have their power turned back on in those cases, except that PG&E has to go out and inspect their equipment before they can re-energize or reestablish service in those large-scale planned outages. So we do encourage you to make your voice heard in the different ways that you can at public hearings or to the PUC. They now have an online comment option where you can send in comments, your experience with planned outages, and you can express again what were the impacts to yourself or to your community to make sure that the CPUC understands that this is really a hardship for many people.
And one last question that I see in the chat is how can someone find out which companies are in their area for these battery installations, specifically asking in Bakersfield, California? You're on mute, Constance.
Yes, that's a great question. There is a list of companies. The best way for you to figure out what companies service your area, and I will say, most companies are providing service throughout most of the state. Go to the website of your provider, and if it's PG&E, for example, go to their website, put in SGIP. You will get an entire fact sheet on SGIP. They also have links to everything you need to know, including providers for the batteries. And now that we've talked about this, you'll probably start noticing on television some of the names of the providers and go, oh, that's what they're talking about. Because before I started learning about this, I didn't make the connection. So you will see places like Sun. A lot of folks that do solar installation also do battery, but they're also separate. You will need to do your due diligence. Just because it's up on the website of your utility, consumer beware. You do your homework to make sure that you get the best provider for you. And the utility does say that by providing that list, they are not saying that the company is, backed by them or that they ensure the quality. Although I do believe they do ensure the quality as they worked with these folks in some ways. So I hope that's helpful. It's a good resource going to the utility website for that information.
Those are all the questions that have come through the chat so far.
Great. Are there any other questions from folks, concerns or thoughts? If this was helpful, would folks, if this was helpful, or if it wasn't, can you use your thumbs up or thumbs down and just let us know out there in the world if any of this was helpful for you? Oh, good. I'm seeing some thumbs up. And if you're one of the people who put thumbs down, I haven't seen any yet, but if you want to, you can. We are open to that, and just let us know how we can do better, because we really want to make sure this is helpful to you all.
Yes, Constance?
Yes.
This is Nora with Central California Legal Services. And great job. I did want to make a comment that for those the participants that are out there, just to let them know that, if you do have customers or you do want, there are CBOs throughout California that deal with these types of issues. It's called Changes, and Legal Services is part of that group. We've been doing this for over 15 years, 20 years, possibly 15 years. So if there's any you out there that do need assistance or you have your clientele, please feel free to contact our office. You can look us up on our website, Central California Legal Services. But we actually deal with a lot of public utilities and telecommunication issues. And of course, our services are free.
Thank you, Nora. Would you mind putting your information in the chat?
Sure, not a problem. Thanks.
We had one follow-up question from Lucas, who asked about the PG&E moratorium outages and asking, is there any other circumstances in which power may be shut off on a larger scale, and how would we be able to help people get their power back on?
So there have always been situations where the utility companies have been able to shut off large swaths of people. Usually that entails work that they have to do to upgrade their equipment or, fix some kind of failure to their equipment. But in those instances, again, as with planned outages with the PSPS events, there's nothing that anyone can do because it usually has to do with safety or upgrades or, work that has to be done on the infrastructure. So medical baseline has always been an option so that people know when those types of planned outages are going to occur. But in recent years, because of the wildfires and trying to prevent wildfires by de-energizing these circuits, like we are seeing just much larger numbers of people being shut off more regularly and for longer amounts of time. And so even if, like, say, for instance, there's a weather event that's going to create a risk situation for wildfire, the problem is that that wind event, for example, might only last a day, but because the utility has to inspect every single circuit before they reintroduce the electricity to make sure that there aren't negative consequences, it usually does take a longer time, which is why you can't get individual customers turned back on during those types of events. So sadly, no, there isn't anything we can do. Again, we rely on the California Public Utilities Commission to do their job, which is to ensure reliable, safe, and affordable utility service to all of California. And so, we continue to push them to do their job and to hold the utility companies accountable. I think
we've
we'll
covered
wrap
all of
up then if there aren't any other questions. Do you see anything else?
Nope, nothing's
We
coming.
really appreciate you all joining us. And yeah, we'll stick around for a minute if anybody has any lingering questions or thoughts. We hope everyone has a nice afternoon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.